I'm not going to go into QBRs, EBRs, all of these like task and checkboxy things because I don't think those are often required. It's as simple as your CSM has to understand what the customer's goal is and has to figure out a way to get them to achieve that. My name is Kristi Falteruso.
I'm Greg Danes.
Dan Ennis.
Ooh, dang. My name is Alex Turkovich.
Jeff Kushmarek.
Dave Epperly.
Ahmed.
Rachel Provan.
Hi, my name is Tino. This is the Lifetime Value Podcast.
The destination
for customer success content.
This episode is sponsored by The Segment, a new kind of customer success newsletter bringing you the latest news, analysis, and references only true lifers will know. Subscribe today by navigating to www.lifetimevaluemedia.com or send us an email at subscribe@lifetimevaluemedia.com.
What's up, lifers, and welcome back to Lifetime Value, your destination for customer success content where we help you make sense of it all, the terms, the headlines, and exactly how many slides is the right number for your QBR. I'm your host, and I'm a lot like those nipple rings on John Hamm. It is hard to look away. My name is Dylan Young. Last episode, we teed up the history of customer success and its origin story. Who created it? It was not Salesforce, and why it was tied to revenue. We highlighted what CS has since morphed into, with a heavy emphasis on the ways in which it interfaces with its internal peer groups like product, marketing, and sales. Now, following closely behind the question that is most often uttered by your family members when at any family gathering you tell them what it is you do, that question being, so what exactly is customer success? Following closely behind that question is another layup for a person who's trying to keep that conversation going but still has no clue what it is you do day to day. That question is, and what are you called? You reply, a customer success manager, of course. Thirdly, and they are guaranteed to come in this order, easily the most confounding question of them all, they will ask you, and what do you do? Exactly. Folks, I still haven't figured this one out. And I think that simply saying, I help my customers be successful is a little like using the word in its own definition. And really like, what is success, man? So first, we defined why customer success exists. Next, let's turn our eye towards what the hell it is that we, the humble practitioners of customer success, do all day. Customer success is like that dress where no one could tell whether it was white and gold or it was blue or black. And if you ask 1,000 people, well, I guess they can't have 1,000 different answers, but they can at least all be uniquely bewildered by that dress. And so it was in asking our panel of experts to explain what it is we expect customer success managers or the profession in general to do. Here's our good friend, Dan Ennis.
Dan Ennis, and I am currently the manager of scale customer success at Monday.com.
Taking the first crack, and a mighty good one.
We expect CSMs to be able to help customers achieve measurable business outcomes with your product, which therefore then business metrics that are the result of that are things like renewals, retention rate being higher. But those are the evidence that the other stuff's been done, not the other way around, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'll pause with that. So that's the high level of the goal, help customers achieve the outcome. And the way I always have described it to people is CSMs are the ones who are on the front line delivering on the promise of their company's value, right? And if the kind of general principle is customers buy on promise but renew on experience, like that's what CSMs are there to help close that gap, to help bridge the gap between the promise that they received and helping customers achieve that outcome in their real experience.
What a great little adage. Customers buy on promise but renew on experience. It reminds me a lot of our good friend Ed Powers and how he thinks about customer success Check out his episode from last season where he talks about how we make buying decisions and how we switch from using our expectations for the initial sale to our experiences for all subsequent purchases. Anyway, next up, we have the perfectly succinct
Kristi Falteruso, and I'm currently the Chief Customer Officer at Client Success.
to provide a similarly aspirational take.
Your job as a CSM is that you are required to understand why your customers purchased our solution, how they're defining success with the solution they've purchased, and then help orchestrate their work together in partnership with you and whatever resources they need to get them there. And so I'm not going to go into QBRs, EBRs, all of these like task and checkboxy things because I don't think those are often required. It's as simple as your CSM has to understand what the customer's goal is and has to figure out a way to get them to achieve that. And it's going to be through a series of training, enablement, project management, right? Like it's not specific tasks and activities, it's strategies you have to deploy to get them there at the end of the day. Could be through change management, right? Strategic relationship development, whatever the case may be, but that is ultimately your goal as a CSM.
If all this jargon is a little bit much for you, and look, we're not even halfway through our count of the word outcomes for this episode. Here's Rachel Provan.
Rachel Provan, the CEO of Provan Success. I'm a customer success leadership coach.
With a more creative but spot on analogy.
It's like if you get a gym membership. Just getting the gym membership and someone showing you how to use the machines does not mean that you are going to show up, do it every day, and get six-pack abs. Think of how many people buy that gym membership and don't do it. The CSM is like getting a personal trainer. They're going to make sure that you're doing it correctly, but they're also going to give you that accountability to make sure your butt shows up and does it and doesn't hurt yourself or just stay in bed. Because you've made this commitment, you've got somebody there who's watching out for you, who's going to be like, hey, where are you? Texting you, you paid me, what's up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it really is kind of like that. You need that person for accountability. And because just because something is logical to the person who built the software does not mean that it's intuitive to the customer. So people are not rational. You need CSMs to make them actually do what is in their own best interest. So we get the outcomes.
And how about just one more opinion here? This is a secret guest of the show this season, Anita Toth, a consultant who's focused on voice of the customer programs. And she likens the CSM's role back to just that.
It's elevating that voice of the customer. It is solving customer problems in a way that, keeps most customers happy or gives a great customer experience, which then in turn benefits the company because those customers stay longer. That's really what I see as the function of customer success.
Great. So we understand what our customer is trying to achieve with our stuff, and then we help them do it. Except what strikes me about Dan and Kristi's explanation is this underlying assumption of maturity in both company and in process. That's no knock on them, but listen to the downright exasperation in Steen Smet's voice.
Hi, my name is Tino, and I'm the team lead of customer success at Whale.
When this same question is posed to him. And I want you to tell me in just a couple of sentences what you believe a day in the life of a CSM looks like.
I can say it in one word: chaos. No. I would say chaos.
That's
no.
true.
I don't think you can put it into words. Depending on the environment that you're working on, like in a startup, I couldn't even start to put it into words. It's so different. If it's like already scale up, well-established company, then I could say then you can do textbook definition. They should start with checking your emails, checking your renewals, checking preparing for your meetings that you have coming up on that day. But then again, we are still firefighters at heart as well. You can't predict the fires that will pop up that day.
Now, that's a guy you can rest assured if you haven't spoken to him before and you won't speak to him again, you know he's still working at a startup where no 2 days are the same. And within each day, he's having a channel switch from business strategy to technical firefighting and everything else. When Rachel Provan and I dug further into this topic, her next answer sang to me. I found it more refreshing, probably more for its focus on a much younger company's experience where I've spent most of my time, but also because it's a little bit cynical, more contrarian than what we've heard thus far.
A lot of that question relies on how far along you are in your customer success maturity. So if you're at the beginning, if you're in a startup, you can't expect them to be working proactively because you haven't given them any tools to do that, nor are you in a place where you should be getting a tool. So everybody starts out reactive. So if they are fielding calls from customers and it's mainly complaints, because that's all you're getting at this point, because you're not able to see if something is going wrong and intervene, it's not ideal, but it's where you start. And there is an immediate benefit to that. When you just bring on a few customer success managers, you will get an increase in GRR, an increase in retention, just by putting a body there, because now people have someone to talk to instead of just expressing their frustration with their feet by walking away. So if you're in an early stage, yes, your CSMs are going to be on the phone a lot. They're going to be reacting to customers who are upset. They're going to be doing that. They're probably going to be spending a lot of time in onboarding or reacting to upset customers. While you're doing that, you need to find out sort of your product market fit. Who are your ideal customers? What are they trying to achieve with your product?
See, that's interesting. Rachel simultaneously rewinds the clock to an earlier time in a company's history, and she throws a whole bunch of ambiguity in the mix for us lifers. Because the earlier in the company's life you join, the more hats you're going to wear, the muddier your job description becomes. And so the more we expect CS to do. Anita hits on the same thing.
Unlike any other team in the company, they have the opportunity to really elevate what customers are saying, what they're challenged with, and bring these to, the leadership team to say, hey, this is what we're hearing. This is what we're seeing.
That's a lot of hats. But hold on just a second. Here's Dan again.
If they have to understand what the outcomes are that customers are achieving before they get to what their specific customers want to do versus their circumstance, what is the outcome? Like, not just what's the functionality of their product, what are expected business outcomes that a customer would want to achieve using your product? You need to be able to understand that. That's beyond just general use cases. It's being able to really connect those dots, which goes to kind of what I was describing earlier, why needing to understand how to get from point A to B is so important. Understanding what that is, and then for their customers, make sure that they are as aligned as possible.
Now, it may not be quite the same thing, but Rachel's discussion of product market fit and ideal customer profile, and Dan's discussion of the business acumen required to truly understand your customer's desired outcomes are birds of a feather. Both demand a level of understanding of the intersection of your customer's needs and your company's offerings. The difference is just whether your company's any good at it yet, really. All right, let's get back to our analogy. And if God help your family, they've held on this long through your explanation over dinner, then maybe the next thing they'd ask you is how it is you accomplish all of this stuff. First, I got to make room for the ineffable voice of God here, the wonderful Greg Danes.
I'm Greg Danes. I'm the CEO of ChurnRx,
who once again reiterates what we've been saying here, what our role and responsibility is, while also taking a first stab at explaining how we do it.
And so I talk a lot about, in customer success, what our role is to produce measurable results and then continually improve them. That's our purpose. That's what we're responsible for. That's what produces long-term retention and expansion. But what we do is we change customer behavior, because that's the thing that drives the results. So I help you change your behavior. You get measurable results. I say, you want to do it again? Here's the next thing you can do. Then I help you change your behavior. As long as I'm doing that, things like expansion and retention become no-brainers.
And in a single episode, the Brevity Award has already changed hands from Kristi to Greg. I'm sorry, Kristi, but you can't get more concise than that. Unfortunately, I'd have a lot of unused content if I just left it there and I didn't at least allow others to expound on the tactics for changing behavior that Greg so eloquently describes. Here's Rachel, who's clearly a little irritated at who I can only imagine is me, with a brief explanation of what you might expect to do in a day, as well as what you shouldn't be doing.
The other thing is, what the hell are we doing all day? Well, I can tell you, we're onboarding customers, on the phone with them, trying to fight fires. If we have the ability to be proactive with a CS tool with accurate data, then we're jumping in and saying, hey, I noticed that you haven't been using the tool. But we're not sitting around twiddling our thumbs, and we're not there to be the geeks who are there to do the homework for sales, who are the jocks. Like, we're not going to do that. It's not the best use of anyone's time. So we're not there to do demos. We are there specifically to get those customers to their outcomes. And anything that interrupts that is going to cost your company money.
Rachel so deftly loops it all back to the dollars and cents. And I think that that is, one, an incredible skill to do on the fly. And two, of course, it's apropos for any CS discussion where, as we have discussed previously, we've got to consistently be communicating value, ROI, and the like, both to our customers and to our internal stakeholders. So then, on that same topic of revenue and what we shouldn't do, let's talk about our role in challenging the customer's ideas or what they believe they need. I chatted with Mo.
Ahmed Akak, Customer Success Manager and the founder of Customer Success Middle East,
about this very thing. The example where I think this always comes into play is if you are just, I refer to it as taking orders, right? Like at a fast food restaurant, right? You just take the order. You're not expected to ask any questions. You just take the order, you make the hamburger, and you give it to the customer, right? But if you do that in customer success, particularly the more complicated your product or your service is, the less likely the customer truly understands what they're asking for. And so you need to understand their business model, what they do specifically, what sort of value they're expecting to get from the product or the service, so that you can help guide them. So that when they say, I need X, Y, or Z, you say, no, I think what you actually need is W, X, and Y. You don't need Z based on how I understand your business. Can you clarify that that's the case?
Absolutely. When you start a discussion with the customer, or first of all, you need to understand why the customer they choose your product to work with. So that's the most important. If you understand why they choose you, then you can start to build on top of that. And you need to have a good understanding of the industry, of the latest trend in the industry. And then when the customer comes and say, I want to do ABC, and you start to ask. And I'm a big believer of the 5 whys framework. So usually whenever I get a question, okay, why? Explain to me why you want this. What are the value you're looking for? Why you want? Then I start to dig into the whys and to understand what is the purpose of this request. And probably at the end of the discussion, as you mentioned, I would say, okay, you don't need ABC, you will take AB, and I do recommend to take Z because that's what will bring more value and will expand your.
And then you put together the plan that helps to prove that that was the case. Or you find out that they didn't need Z and you go through the process of them. Again, we hit on defining desired outcomes, advising on the best method for deriving them, and thoughtful periodic realignment and iteration. Now let's shift our focus back to Dan and what he envisions a true day in the life looks like.
It usually comes through, whether that's meetings, whether that's through email cadence. I'm not going to use any of the formal types of meeting names because I think that there is some good, much needed questioning going on in the customer success space right now on like how we've historically approached some of these like prior conversations.
Death to the QBR is what you're saying.
I feel I've seen that come up a lot, but yeah, I think it's less that the QBR needs to die and more that it doesn't make sense for every product to have a QBR more than anything.
Sure.
One team at a larger company using your product, that doesn't need a business review. But so I need to be able to understand what are the blockers. And so that typically comes through regular connection with customers and hearing from them. But this is where I think some of the good evolution of CS has been is customers are who will help determine how that actually looks. Is it an asynchronous update via email? Is it a regular meeting with them to understand what's going on? Is it something that they're submitting that information to you? However that looks. And so I would say the activity is being aligned with your customers' goals and challenges to get there. That's broad because it could be meetings, it could be regular email cadence, it could be asynchronous communication with video platforms, it could be in-app in your product. It doesn't really matter the exact mechanism, but being aware and consistently aware of have their goals changed? Do they still have the same goals, and what are the headwinds to getting there, and how do they feel about progress? And then being an expert in your product so you can be able to help them navigate getting to there. So as far as a regular activity, making sure you're staying on top of your product's functionality. I don't think there's one list of things, and it depends on the org and what they're trying to do.
Now, Dan is currently in a role focused on scale motions. And so he highlights many of the various channels through which we can reach and communicate with our customers and that do not necessarily require a synchronous meeting, though he does mention those as well. But what is the content of those communications most often? It's probably about those outcomes we keep talking about. How do you know how all that's going? Rachel mentioned earlier using a dedicated tool to monitor usage and the like, but what if you don't have a tool yet?
You can ask them, like, I know that you wanted to use this in this way to achieve this result, right? Like you wanted to be able to save 20% of your time that you would usually spend on this, do it 20% faster so that you can focus on other projects. Have you found that you're getting this done 20% faster? Yes or no? Like sending a survey. Whether they say yes or no, you know what to do next. But skipping that part of it makes no sense. So the first thing you need to be doing is finding out, and this is something CSM should be doing, in their first conversations with the customers, they should be finding out, what is your desired outcome? How will you know when you've achieved it? What do those metrics look like? And what would be an early indication that things are moving in the right direction, right? So that you get going in the right direction. You don't have to wait till you think that you're at the end of it. Once you have that, it's, what do you have to do on your end to make that happen? We know what we have to do on our end and we'll talk about that, but what has to happen on your end? And do you see anything that would get in the way of that happening? And from there, you create a success plan and you share it with them. And it's basically just, this is how we get from A to B. These are the steps. This is what we're going to do on our end. This is what you're going to do on your end to get that result using our product. And we're going to meet up along the way to make sure that we haven't veered off course. Because obviously we can't see into your internal metrics. So we're going to meet up every so often. We're going to optimize the next steps. We're going to say, all right, these are your results so far. All right, do these little tweaks. Because people don't like check-in calls, but they like the idea of tweaking and optimizing. So once your customer success managers have done that for a while, they will see repeatable outcomes that people are looking for. And they will see which ones people are able to achieve successfully and which ones they aren't. If you're smart as a company, you're asking your CSMs what those are, and you're using that to figure out your ideal customer profile. And as a CSM, what you can do is track, hey, these are the customers who are having success easily, quickly. These are the type of people who love our product. Mm-hmm. And then communicating that up, because that's going to help marketing. That's going to help sales. If they understand the why of that, it's easier to speak to those kind of customers And that's going to create a positive loop where they're able to close customers who are a good fit more easily. Once you have those outcomes that you know you're good at, and there can and should be more than one, and that's going to look different, whether it's a gigantic corporation or a tiny corporation, there are going to be different steps to get there. So once you know what that looks like in a predictable fashion, that's when you want to create playbooks and get a CS tool so that you can start to automate some of that. But you don't want to automate anything until you know what works. You only automate things that are successful. So that's at the point where you can start to get proactive and say, this is going well or not.
That one took you for a ride, didn't it? But what Rachel does there is essentially explain the entire feedback loop for a CSM at an early stage startup. Define and agree upon desired outcomes. Hello, does this sound like Mo again? Measure and iterate on the processes aiming to achieve said outcomes, and then do it again, optimizing and sharing feedback with your colleagues along the way. And so we've reached the end of dessert at this family dinner, in my belabored analogy. Perhaps because Rachel is her own boss and can say whatever she damn well feels, she is the star 2 weeks in a row of yet another episode segment ominously titled, But Everything Was Not All Right, when she attacks head on the issue every customer success team deals with today, that of limited capacity and the ask for them to take on more and more and more and more and more.
A customer success manager is trying to build a bridge. They're trying to build a bridge from where the customer started to where they want to be. If they get where they want to be, they're going to keep giving you money. They're going to give you more for this. They're going to keep renewing. They're going to give you more money for other things because this worked. Every time you add something to their plate, you're asking them to start another bridge. And soon you have about 15, 20 bridges that are all 2 or 3 steps along with nothing reaching the other side. So you have people who are very, very busy all day and they feel very busy and very burnt out, and nobody's gotten to the other side. You've got 0 results at anything because you can't do 15 things and do them well. You can do 1 or 2 things well.
Spicy. The role of a CSM will differ from org to org and truly from phase to phase within a single org. Folks like Steno are firefighting, assumably because they've still got a mandate, literal or implied, to do some of those same things Rachel really encourages us not to do. They've both got the right idea. We do what we need to encourage retention. Maybe what we should be telling our aunts and uncles that we do is whatever it takes, at least until we reach a point of maturity, a point of specialization, or with the means to install tools that make our calendars and our days less of a murder scene. I want to / don't want to say that sounds like a pipe dream because who am I to say? Maybe my notion of the ideal CSM role is ill-conceived. But that is what we'll be tackling next up when we talk about misconceptions about the role in the CS organization. And I'd love to hear what you think. So here's the question. What part of the role of customer success do your colleagues at your job and maybe the community at large get wrong? I want you to write us a message at hello@lifetimevaluemedia.com with your thoughts. And if we use those on air, we'll send you a piece of swag. Thanks again for tuning in, folks. Peace.
You've been listening to Lifetime Value, the destination for customer success professionals. If you like what you've heard, please rate our show and subscribe wherever you find your content. Please note that the views expressed in these conversations are attributed only to those individuals on this recording and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of their respective employers. For all inquiries, please reach out via email to dylan@lifetimevaluemedia.com. Find us on YouTube @Lifetime Value and find us on the socials @Lifetime Value Podcast. Until next time.
I can do, and then you pick one.
Yeah.
Okay. This is Mohammed Al-Taq, the founder of Customer Success Middle East, and you are listening to Lifetime Value, the destination of customer. Sorry. Again, this is Mohammed Al-Qad, the founder of Customer Success Middle East, and you are listening to Lifetime Value, the destination for customer success content.